I take it you've all read The Story of a Soul by Saint Therese. If you haven't, you have to hand in your nun ID card. It's a very important book. And do you remember the character of Sister St. Peter in the book, by any chance? Sister St. Peter was an elderly nun who, let's just say, wasn't the most pleasant nun in the convent. She was rather difficult to deal with. I know it's hard for you to imagine, you don't have that type in the parish visitors, but in the Carmelites they've got lots of them. Let's listen to St. Therese herself about her experience with Sister St. Peter. At 10 to 6 every evening, someone had to go out from meditation to take Sister St. Peter along to the refectory. It cost me a lot to offer my services because I knew how difficult she was to please, almost impossible. But it was a wonderful chance, and I did not want to miss it. So very humbly I offered to help her, and after a lot of trouble, she was prevailed upon to accept me. Every evening, when I saw her shaking her hourglass about, I knew that she meant, "Let's go." Summoning up all my courage, I got up, and then a real ceremony began. Her stool had to be moved. It had to be carried just so. One must not go too quickly. At last we set off. I had to go behind her and support her by her belt. And I used to do this as gently as I possibly could. But if by some mischance she happened to stumble, she thought I was not holding her properly, that she was going to fall over. So she would say, "My goodness, you're going much too fast. I'm going to hurt myself." So I would try to go more slowly, and she would say, "Why don't you keep up with me? I don't feel your hand. You're letting me go. I'm going to fall over. How right I was when I said that you're much too young to look after me." At last we arrived at the refectory without any more mishaps. But then there was more trouble. She had to be maneuvered into her place very skillfully so as not to be hurt in any way. Her sleeves had to be rolled back again just so. Then I could go. It was not long before I noticed that she could not cut her bread very easily, so I used to do that too before finally leaving her. As she had never told me she wanted me to do it, she was touched. And it was this unlooked-for act of kindness which won her heart completely. Though I learned later that what touched her most of all was the fact that when I had done all I could, I always gave her, so she said, my very best smile. And in the end, St. Therese says, with humility but also honesty, she said, "I escorted Sister St. Peter with so much love that I could not possibly have done it better had it been our Lord himself." And yet we know that Sister St. Peter was probably the hardest sister in the convent to escort. And yet Therese did it as if it was Jesus himself, and that's probably why today we call her Saint Therese of Lisieux. Sisters, we all have a Sister St. Peter in our lives. And that's not a dig to anybody. It could actually have more to do with us than it does with the sister, but we all have a Sister St. Peter in our lives. Many of us even have several of them. And that's true in every vocation, whether you're in a convent or a rectory or a family. We all have a Sister St. Peter, and by that I mean we all have people in our lives who are difficult to love. People whose personalities we don't find naturally appealing, but perhaps even repulsive. People who are ornery, who contradict us, who interrupt us, who have to one-up every story we tell. People who don't laugh at our jokes. Did you know that St. Thomas More said that the greatest penance of his life was that his second wife didn't laugh at his jokes? It was difficult for him to love her. People who just don't have personalities that gel with ours. We all have the Sister St. Peter's in our lives. And I really think that one of the greatest ways to interpret today's gospel is as a call to love those people. Listen to what Jesus says, just a couple of excerpts. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. He asks, if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? What credit is it to you if you love those who love you? And then he tells us that even God himself is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. A lot of times when people hear this gospel, they think, I have to love my enemy. And they think in very dramatic terms. The drunk driver who killed my son. The person who stabbed me in the back and betrayed me. The soldier of the enemy army. Those occasions are very rare in life, hopefully. But every single day we have opportunities to love people who are difficult for us to love. Those are the Sister St. Peter's in our lives. And those are the people Jesus is calling us to love in today's gospel. And he wants us to love them to such a degree that if the people around us were interviewed, they would have no idea for whom our preference is. If we're really being saints, when people are interviewed after our death, they should actually guess that we loved and preferred even more the people who were the most difficult for us to love. Because those are the people Jesus wants us to go to first, and with a preferential love, the ones we're least attracted to. When we live in that way, we're really being true Christians. And when we love these people in our lives, they become for us a pathway to holiness. We should never see them as objects to be used so that we can grow in holiness, but when we put this gospel into practice, the people towards whom we live it become pathways to holiness for us. You know, St. Josemaria Escrivá was very fond of saying, never say about a particular individual, this person annoys me. Only say, this person sanctifies me. Never she annoys me, but only she sanctifies me. She helps me to grow in holiness. And if my goal in life is to become a saint, and that difficult sister helps me to become a saint, I should be on my knees every day thanking God for her presence in my life, because she's helping me to reach my goal. So who is the Sister St. Peter in your life? Don't answer out loud. Whoever he or she is, love them with all your heart. Not only will you be a true Christian at that point, but that person may even help you to become a great saint like St. Therese of Lisieux.